Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to try and keep this one short, sweet, and to the point because, well, for time's sake, because I have a life and I work a full 40-hour work week, and I have stuff that I want to do, and I also... But today, I want to cover an article that has quite a slant to it by Psychology Today. Alright guys, just for damage control, I just wanted to say that I have no idea what my problem was during recording this video. I'm not going to re-record it. The things that I say in it I stand behind, but for some reason I sound like a illiterate piece of shit. So feel free to make fun of that all you like. But what they're talking about in the Psychology Today, you're talking about the difference between behavioral psychology and evolutionary psychology or biological psychology. Behavioral psychology, is a fetus going to have behavioral psychology? No, not really. When the psychology that they're talking about is stuff that you can study through biology and neurology, and absolutely you can look at the brain activity of a fetus depending on the particular trimester that the fetus is in. This is another issue that I had with this article that made it very confusing to read, is that the Psychology Today was hopping around and bouncing from one trimester to another trimester, and they would never tell you which trimester they were referring to, so it was like, am I referring to a baby or a fetus at this point? 32 weeks of gestation, that is the third trimester, we won't abort. That's when the brain starts taking on the form of a normal human brain. That takes place within the third trimester, somewhere along like a first trimester, first half of the second trimester. I believe that's the second trimester, somewhere in there is the cutoff point for abortion. So no, 32 weeks, yeah, I have no doubt that a fetus, or a baby really is what you should be calling it, 32-week third trimester fetus is probably going to have some level of psychology, but not behavioral psychology. And the trick there is to convince you that the first trimester to the first half of the second trimester, that the fetus will have some sort of psychology, and that is absolutely ridiculous. 32 weeks was the first posted thing that they had in Psychology Today. 32 weeks is third trimester, which is not something we'd even abort. So no, the abortion debate hasn't changed. I stand behind everything that I say, though, in that psychology can absolutely be influenced by the mother's environments, and hormones emitted by the mother based on her environment can affect the fetal development. I still stand behind all that. I'm sorry I'm not going to re-record this, and I'm sorry for the crappy, illiterate bullshit. But anyway, thank you. Continue watching. And I have, in contrast, another article that talks about the same things without a bias slant. I will leave the link to both articles in the description below. This particular video was a request by the awesome, amazing Polish kid. Now, there are very, very, very many aspects I can get into, but I want to primarily focus on the spin that this article is given. So first, I want to look at the conclusion based off the premise of Psychology Today, which is, behaviorally speaking, there's little difference between a newborn and a 32-week-old fetus. And I want you to pay very close attention to the phrase 32-week-old fetus. A new wave of research suggests that the fetus can feel, dream, and even enjoy Cat in the Hat. the abortion debate may never be the same. So that's their conclusion, that a 32-week-old fetus can feel, dream, and enjoy the Cat in the Hat. All right. So let's go to the other article I have, which is based off of when I'm not sure what news vendor created this, but it's basically just the facts. Which it says at the very beginning, the fetal nervous system, i.e. your baby-to-be's brain and spinal cord, is one of the very first systems to develop. In fact, it's making big strides before you even know you're pregnant. The part of the baby's brain, before we get into the science of fetal brain development, here's a quick anatomy premiere on your baby's brain. There are 5 parts, each responsible for different functions. 1, the cerebrum. This is the biggest part of the brain, and it's responsible for thinking, remembering, and feeling. This is where the cerebral cortex and its various lobes, including frontal and temporal lobes, reside. And there's the cerebellum, the area in charge of motor control, which the cerebellum continues to develop after the baby is born. Then there's the brain stem, the engine driving many of the baby's most vital functions, including heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure. The pituitary gland, a pea-sized gland, releases hormones into your body that are responsible for growth, metabolism, and more. And then the hypothalamus, the area deals with body temperature, hunger and thirst, sleep, and emotions. The first trimester happens between 6 to 7 weeks of pregnancy. The second trimester is between 16 weeks and 21 weeks. The third trimester is brimming with rapid development of neurons and wiring. Baby's brain roughly triples in weight during the last 13 weeks of gestation, growing from about 3.5 ounces at the end of the second trimester to almost 10.6 ounces at term. So there we have an idea of the weeks involving the first, second, and third trimester. So now let's look at the premise of psychology today. By 9 weeks, a developing fetus can hiccup, react to loud noises. By the end of the second trimester, it can hear. Well, I have no doubt that it can hear and react to noises in the second trimester, because at 9 weeks, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about the second trimester. But can it understand the noises that it hears? Can it feel vibrations of noise waves? Absolutely, it can. We're talking about the second trimester. Just as adults do, the fetus experiences the rapid eye movement, REM, sleep of dreams. Now, REM, there was a study that was conducted that REM, rapid eye movement, does not necessarily mean that a person is dreaming. You would have to have the development of subconscious to be able to do that, which doesn't develop until later. So, and there's nothing in utero for a baby to have subconscious to dream about. It's surrounded by amniotic fluid inside the mother's womb. The next thing that Psychology Today proclaims, the fetus savors the mother's meal. Savors. So it's already developed subjective thinking and favors some foods over others. Subjectivity has not been developed in a fetus yet. This is a pretty bold proclamation. This is saying that the fetus, while in utero, has already developed the capacity, the mental capacity, to decipher or think about the difference between things that it likes and that it doesn't like when it's receiving all of its nutrients while in utero via the umbilical cord. First, picking up the food tastes of a culture in the womb. No, the fetus has no awareness of culture while in utero. That is ridiculous. That is retarded. Among other mental feats, the fetus can distinguish between the voice of the mom and that of a stranger and respond to a familiar story and read to it. No, it can't. And the important aspect of this particular proclamation, what trimester are they saying this occurs in, has every bit to do with whether or not this is real, whether it's fact or fiction. If you're talking about first trimester, the answer is absolutely not. This is fiction. Third trimester, this would be more believable. And pay attention to this spin. This is very interesting. Even a premature baby is aware, feels, responds, and adapts to its environment. Well, of course, a premature baby can feel and respond and adapt to its environment because it's been born. It's out of the womb. So absolutely, yes, it can do that. You're talking about a baby that's been born. Just because the fetus is responsive to certain stimuli doesn't mean that it should be the target of efforts to enhance development. Sensory stimulation of the fetus can in fact lead to bizarre patterns of adaptation later on. Now, one thing that I would like to mention amongst the premises of this is that a long time ago, well, not a long time ago, back in the 90s, people thought that if they played Beethoven or Bach to their fetus growing inside of their bellies, it would enhance brain development. That was later proven to be false. However, playing Beethoven or Bach or music while the baby is in utero isn't going to harm the fetus or in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to enhance the development of it either. What a lot of the things that affect the fetus that are growing while in utero have to do with the mother's hormone levels. If the mother is stressed out, the stress hormones will absolutely affect the development of the fetus. And another study that was done by a neurologist that was studying the biological connection between a fetus while in utero and the mother's environment. The mother's perception of the environment absolutely plays an effect on the development of a fetus. What he was looking at were women that gave birth during World War II, and there's plenty of examples through communism and Hitler's fascism that women who were pregnant and being deprived of nutrients, so you're talking about starving, it affected the baby's metabolism, and this is an adaptation. That this is something that is evolutionary. This has nothing to do with psychology. This is an adaptation that the fetus was able to develop with the sense that it's not getting enough nutrients, and so therefore when it's being brought up into the environment, it's being brought up into the environment with the adaptation of a different metabolism than the mother, with the expectancy that the amount of nutrients that are going to be available are not sufficient, so the metabolism has been changed so that it can adapt to its environment. That has nothing to do with psychology and everything to do with biology and neurology. Well, not even so much neurology. It's more biological and evolutionary science than anything. But this neurologist was trying to study how environment affects the fetus, and the environment does affect the fetus in the sense that it affects the mother. So if the mother's consuming less nutrients, it's going to affect the fetus's development. But the one thing the reason why I say to pay attention to 32 weeks. 32 weeks, a 32-week-old fetus, you are talking about third trimester. We do not abort at third trimester. We do not abort at second trimester, which is 16 to 21 weeks. We abort at the first trimester, which is between 6 to 7 weeks. So when this article is talking about 9 weeks and the development of hiccups in reaction to loud noises, it's reacting to sound vibrations and has very little understanding of the noises that it's hearing, because as we learned from the other article, that the baby's brain doesn't start fully developing until the third trimester, and actually the brain doesn't even continue. It continues development after it's been born. So to proclaim that the abortion debate will never be the same is obsolete. It absolutely is the same. Nothing has changed. Everything that this article is talking about happens within the second or third trimester or after the baby's been born. And a fetus, I'm sorry to say, absolutely does not have a psychology that is anywhere indicative to the psychology of a full-grown adult or child or adolescent. It's a completely different field. You are talking about the psychology that basically it's responding off of instinct and nothing more. It doesn't have a overly complicated psychology yet. And you can go through and you can read these two articles back to back. One article is just based off of fact, and the other one is using facts to project a spin. 32 weeks is third trimester, we won't abort. So what does a 32-week-old fetus have anything to do with the abortion debate? We're not going to abort a 32-week-old baby, a 32-week-old fetus still developing in the womb, because it's about to be born. And I would say that, yeah, at 32 weeks, it probably does have a lot of brain development. That's where we see the biggest impact of the brain development. We learn that from the third trimester, where we no longer abort, where the brain starts to take on a shape and form that is indicative of a brain that we are used to seeing. That happens in the third trimester. The second trimester is where it's getting iffy on whether or not you should abort, and depending on which week in the second trimester you're talking about. And many of the proclamations that it's calling psychology have more to do with neurology and biology than anything, and very little to do with psychology. The article produced by Psychology Today is a right-wing push against abortion. 32 weeks, a 32-week-old fetus, is absolutely in the third trimester and very close to being born. So that's a very interesting spin. When you don't take into consideration the different weeks, the different trimesters, and the different developmental stages of the different trimesters, we lose the narrative. So there's many aspects to go in and pick this article apart, but for time's sake, I'm going to leave it at that. And I will leave these links in the description below. And if you go and you read these two articles back to back, you will very quickly see the bias and the spin. Because all the things that they're referring to are things that happen during the latter part of the second trimester, or during the latter part of the third trimester, or even after the baby has been born, where it is no longer considered even a fetus. So I will leave you to your thoughts and leave them in the comments section below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And with that, I'm out.